Greetings, squishy earthlings, and welcome back to your 4th episode of Java Pong programming. Hello. I haven't really got any first thing notices to give you, so I'm just gonna jump straight into the programming stuff. First thing I want to do is up here. We don't really want to run off the main thread, which is basically a set of programs that the CPU uses in one of its calls. Threading, woohoo, I don't know. So we don't really want it to run off the main thread where Windows is running and all the other generic things are running. So let's put it on a new thread so that it's going to deal with it separately. And to do that, we're going to implement runnable. So implements runnable. ABLE. Okay. All this is going to do is allow us to stick it on a new thread. It also allows us to put the run method in, which is quite handy for us because, well, it's just handy. So, first thing that we want to do, or second thing that we want to do up here, is actually create a Boolean constant called running. All this is going to show is the game running yes or is the game running no. So public static Boolean running, and let's set it to false to start with. We also want a thread variable because that's the class, the instance of the thread class that we're going to be using for the thread. So we're going to put public static final, I think. Yeah, final thread. No, thread. Call it thread, and let's just leave it like that for now. Let's import it. No, not final. Okay. Why is it giving me a no? It's not. Okay, good. So, in the init method, we want to initialize the thread, which is why I made it. So we go down here and say thread equals new thread. Let's pass in this because we want this, or the thread, to be from this class. And let's give it a special name. So let's call it data.name when it shows up, because Eclipse is being laggy again. Come on. Oh, not responding. Here we are. Thread.name. So we have the thread set up. We have the running method set up. So in the start method, because when we run it, it's going to go new engine.init.start. So in the start method, we're going to check, is the game already running? Because we don't want to start the game again if it's running, because that's going to create a new thread of the same game, which is going to confuse the bejeebers out of your computer. So let's go if not running. I'm doing this in brackets for a reason. Actually, I will say it a different way. If running, no. If it's running, or thread dot is alive, you don't want to do anything. Okay. But if it's not, then we do want to. So let's surround this in brackets and stick an exclamation mark in front of it. All that's going to do is invert it. So if it's true, it's going to become false, and if it's false, it's going to become true. So if it's not running, that should be an and. Sorry. So if it's not running and the thread isn't alive, i.e. we haven't, well, or we're not running off the thread, we want to say thread.start, as in actually start the thread. In the stop method, because we have one, we're going to stop the game. So if I can remember this, we want to go thread.interrupt. All that's going to do is interrupt the thread, saying nope, don't want to run you anymore. So we interrupt the thread. We say frame.close because we're not using the frame anymore. And we also say system.exit, as in actually exit the the game and pass in null because we're not doing any errors to it. I'm just going to check this against my already done class because I have made this before. So let's just check it against this. Sorry people. Oh yeah, I forgot to do something. Okay. So, one last thing that we want to do in the init class. Am I right here? I don't know. Hang on, I'm so sorry people. Give me a minute. The running is true. That's what it was. Okay, so in the init method we want to say running. No, not in the init method. We're going to say in the start methods. I'm sorry. In the start method we're going to set running to true because the game is running. And in here we are going to say something I have forgotten again. My memory is absolutely chill. Running is false. So in here we're going to go running equals false. Okay, we've done that. If you've already noticed, we've got an error up here. That's because we haven't implemented the run method from runnable. All this is going to do is say when the thread is started, i.e. thread.start, it's going to call the run method and start the thread. So we go down here and say public void run. And just to speed up, I'm going to put an override annotation. OVER. Okay, so that override annotation over there, just to speed things up. What's the time? 6 minutes. Okay. In the run method now, what we're going to do is start a few variables. We want a long initial time. All this is going to do is going to control when we say update, when we say render the game. So initial time equals system.nanotime. Then we also want private double. Wait, no, stop. Okay. We also want a frames per second variable, which is how many frames are going to run per second, i.e. how many times the game is going to call the render method. So in the data, I'm going to go down here and say public static final int long, let's put it int FPS, and let's call it 60 for now. Now we also probably want a new one called UPS, which is the updates per second, which is going to do or control how many times you call the update method per second. So UPS is also 180 because we want to update the game or we want to render it because it just makes it smoother. Although a lot of games actually run straight off 60 frames per second or updates per second, but I like my games to be slightly different. So back into the engine method. We're going to say final double time u is equal to 1 billion divided by data dot updates per second. This is going to be the control variable, what we use for doing that. We also want one for the frames per second. Because I'm lazy, I'm just going to copy it and paste it. So frames per second, and let's call it time f. We also want a double delta variable, delta u is 0, delta f is also 0. This is going to just log how many times we've already called the update, so we can control it. And finally we want something to say actually how many times we have done it before. So the delta u is going to say stuff, I don't know, I'm tired. It's 6:45. Be easy on me. So we also want integer variable, and let's call this frames 0 and ticks equals 0. In actually a lot of games you'll find that sometimes they'll have ticks, sometimes they'll have updates. They both mean the same thing, it's all updating the game. Yeah, both mean the same thing, they're interchangeable. I'm using both of them because it's easiest to say the game has ticked instead of the game has updated, which is really long and tongue twiddling, especially when you're recording. So we have all these things. We want to also, well, get straight into the running method. So, while running, or while true at the moment. This is basically the running method allows us to quit this while loop when we wanted to. And all this is going to do is loop through, update and render many times. Okay. Finally we want a new variable called long current time with system dot nano time. And this is going to just allow us to find out how much time has passed. So we can say that delta U is equal to current time minus last time divided by time time U. Nope. Current time minus initial time. And this is going to add a certain value onto the delta time, and it's going to keep doing that until a 60th of a second has passed, and then it's going to when a 60th of a second has passed, this delta value is going to be 1 or greater, and we can say update the game and then set this back to 0. Now we also want one for the frames, so we'll go delta F is equal to current time minus initial time divided by time F. And lastly, what we want to do is set the initial time back to the current time, because we don't want it to continue to add on more and more and more until it's just bugged out again, which is crazy. And it will do this because we're not bumping forwards the initial time, we're keeping it constant. We don't want to do that. So initial time, INITIAL time, is equal to current, the integer. I can't type, so. Last thing in this loop, we want to say that if delta U is greater than or equal to 1, we are going to update the game. So, update. I also want to have a method completely separate from the update, which is going to get all the inputs and deal with the inputs first. So this just separates them. So when you have a player, you can say update the game if I press down, I move the player down if I press down, and then I can have an update thing saying move the ball down relative to its speed. So to do this, we're going to have another method called getInput. No, GET, Robert. Oh, the crazy phoenix. Right. And finally, what we're going to do in this if statement is say ticks ++. This is just going to bump it up one. So we have, well, we can say that we have updated the game once. And finally, delta U minus equal to 1. We'll do the same thing for the frames. So if delta F is greater than or equal to 1, we're going to say render. We're going to render frames ++ and delta F minus equal to 1. I'm mucking this up, aren't I? You've realised I'm using a much easier way. Delta U minus minus and delta F minus minus. all that's going to do is take the 1 from it. Okay. And finally we want something to say. Or every second we want to output how many times we've done it, just so we can have a counter, actually use this counter that we've now created. So up here I'm going to say long timer is equal to system.currentTimeMills, and have a new variable called timer, or no, let's call it delta t. Or delta t, instead of equal to 0. So down here we're going to say delta t is equal to system.currentTime is go. And the difference between those two is going to be how many times it's passed. What's the time doing? Okay. So we're going to say down here, if delta t minus timer is greater than 1000, i.e. if a second has passed, actually greater than or equal to 1000, we're going to say to do stuff. I'll get to this in the next episode because I'm running out of time. I'm due for dinner in 5 minutes. So, well, in this method, in the next tutorial, what we're going to do is create the method that's going to count how many times it's actually updated it and render that to the player in a debug menu that we may or may not create. We may put it in the title, we may put it in the debug menu. I haven't decided quite yet. Very last thing I'm going to do is down here, because we haven't created it, not there, I'm going to say, create these methods. So, private void, private void get input, and you want private void update, and private void render. Also in the next method, or next tutorial, I will be going over the graphics settings that we're going to use for this. I'm going to actually leave you there. All this is pretty much finished. The game loop. Like I say, we're going to put a bit more stuff in there about actually rendering to the player how much, or what's our actual frames per second, because all this in the data class is the desired frames per second. What's our actual frames per second is going to be what this counter is showing. So I will see you again next episode, where we'll be doing that and filling in these methods. So see you later. Goodbye, people.